sounds bad.
Yes.
Think they're on?
All right, it's 7 o'clock. Let's call this meeting to order, and I will do the roll call. Commissioner Downs,
Here.
Commissioner Dupuy,
Here.
Commissioner Johns,
Here.
Commissioner Lee,
Here.
Commissioner McQuaid,
Here.
and Commissioners Locke and you are absent tonight. Okay, Chair Johns, who's up to read the land acknowledgement this time?
I'm not sure who's up. I think Commissioner Locke was the last one. Was that right?
We're going in age order, right? My birthday's on Saturday. I think that makes it me. I don't know. We'll go with that.
Okay.
Thanks. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lejeune. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community, and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home.
Thank you.
And moving on, let's move on to number 2, approval of minutes. And this is going back to the November 16th, 2023 meeting. So we lacked a quorum in December and had to cancel last month.
I'll move approval.
Second.
All right, let's take the vote. Commissioner Downs,
Yes.
Commissioner Dupuy,
Yes.
Commissioner Johns,
Yes.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner McQuaid,
Yes.
and again, Commissioners Locke and you are absent tonight. So the ayes have it. All right. Number 3, as usual, is public comment. There's no one in the council chambers. I'm looking online, and there's one attendee, but no hands up. Give it a couple seconds. All right, let's move on to announcements. Number 4, I personally don't have any announcements, but if anyone in the commission has announcements they'd like to make, now's the time.
Guess not.
It appears no announcements. Moving on, number 5 is the informational report. And there is the attachment to the agenda that was posted online, which was the monthly dashboard. And my understanding is that should have the prior 2 months worth of data, 3 months worth of data. In the same format as the previous dashboards. If there's any comments or thoughts about that, we will on.
I have a comment about the dashboard. It seems to me that we appreciate getting the dashboard, but we don't, at this point, really know what it means in order to ask more questions. So I'm wondering if there's a way to have someone who represents the department available for questions about the dashboard so that we can then ask those questions and think more about public safety. Does that sound sensible?
Yes. It's my understanding that in December, there was going to be some presentation by I believe, the police chief, and then we didn't have quorum, and so I assume it didn't happen. I wasn't here, obviously. Is that going to happen?
Yes, we're still planning on having that presentation. It's just a matter of getting it scheduled with Chief Geisberger. He, as you can see, he's not available this month and wasn't available last month either. But we'll do our best to make that happen in the next couple meetings.
And is it possible to think about having just a representative of the department at our meeting? Not necessarily the chief, but someone who represents the department
I would imagine
at
it would
each meeting?
have to be someone that's authorized to answer questions on their behalf, and I don't know who that would be besides the chief.
Yeah, I also, don't know exactly who that would be, whether it just be the lieutenants or whether it would go beyond that in the rank structure. But I think we could make the request and see if there is someone else who could answer questions on the months the chief couldn't be here.
Yeah, does that make sense to you? Because, again, we're operating in a vacuum and a lack of information. And while we're in a process where we're trying to learn more and get that information, I think we're getting to a point of angst about it. So if we can come up with some ways to improve that and educate ourselves more quickly, I think it would be helpful.
I think it might also be an idea to have this presentation by some representative of the police department to be on some sort of standing basis, because it seems to me that almost every meeting we open by requesting some kind of presentation, whether it be on like a regular report on the dashboard or an explanation of the numbers here we see on the dashboard or on a specific topic. But I think it's been a pretty consistent ask, so I think we might want to start thinking about requesting a presentation on some sort of standing basis.
I think it's a bit unfair when the chief and the lieutenant was here in December, and people didn't even basically have the courtesy to say they weren't going to come, and Chair Johns and myself were the only ones here. Alex did Zoom in, but unfortunately that doesn't count to the quorum. We didn't even have a quorum last month. So I think the onus is partly on us, at least, if we're so interested that we need to show up. As far as the dashboard, I can see it might be helpful to kind of have a better understanding as to what is meant by property crime. I'm not sure we need every month to hear about it. It's for the same, numbers change, but the criteria is the same. Perhaps the next time the chief's able to come, he could kind of give us a synopsis of reports. What's in each category? What does it mean? And that might kind of help us move this along.
So how do we go about requesting a representative from the police department to come? Is that something that would happen after the meeting? You guys would make that request on our behalf?
Yes.
Okay.
They do have the plan to come, it's
Yeah.
just that happened to have the conflicts. And when they were able to come, this commission wasn't available.
Yeah.
discussions on 5-1?
Sorry, say again?
Any other discussions on this item, the monthly dashboard? Okay, moving on to, actually, we need to open this up for public comment real quick. Let me see who we got. Still no one in the council chambers. Public comment is open. I see 4 members in the audience, 3 members in the audience virtually. No hands up. No request for comment. So we can move on. Number 6 is excuse me, presentations. We have a couple that we have planned, including the one that Chief Geisberger was here for in December, but we couldn't get him scheduled for this month, so there's no presentations this month. So let's move on to number 7, which is discussion and possible action on matters related to the following items. 7-1 is sort of a holdover from your previous meeting, just the consideration of the qualifications for the potential consultant. So if you want to continue that conversation or sort of remind yourselves of about that conversation, now's the time.
Member Jones?
Thank you. I mean, I think, to me, there are a couple things that, are important and then some, really challenging issues to weigh. I think, we do need someone who, the 2 things that I would say to me unambiguously seem important are that somebody who has experience in engaging with complaints. So we don't want somebody who we're paying to educate themselves about the process. And I think we also want someone who is independent of the city. So it shouldn't be someone, tied to the firm that represents the city because there's potential conflict there. So I think those 2 things, I feel like, expertise, independence of the city in other respects. The one that I really go back and forth on is, what gets called by various names, which is sort of not just independence of from the city, but their relationship to law enforcement. We want someone who does understand what they're doing, and that means quite likely they will have engaged with law enforcement, possibly on multiple sides of issues. And so I see some, recommendations that endorse, having someone who's never worked, in law enforcement, and I understand the logic of that, a fear that someone's biased for it. And I also understand the sort of challenge of that you could strike someone whose time in law enforcement demonstrates their own independence. Maybe they worked at internal affairs or something like that where they demonstrated their independence. And so, I think that's the one that, for me, I really, find challenging to sort of weigh out the pluses and minuses, of whether we would prefer, of how to come down there.
Anyone else?
I agree with him, but I was going to add to that I think that whatever consultant we would potentially want to engage for any issue is really dependent on what the issue is as well, and if they have experience with that issue, because it could be a number of things that are, potentially being investigated or looked at. Could be law enforcement itself, or a case of abuse power or whatever, or it could be something with within the community concerns, like whatever. But I think it would be important because I feel like potential consultant would have expertise in certain situations, more than others. So I think it's almost, I understand talking about these qualifications for the eventuality of having to hire someone, but until we know what the issue is, it almost seems all we can do is sort of check some basic boxes. We can't really hone in on the details of it all unless we know what the situation is. We're talking about a hypothetical at this point.
Does it make sense to at least have a short list of folks that we know we could turn to and then make the final selection among those, that short list based on what our needs of the moment were?
So essentially a list of candidates potentially that meet some minimum qualifications.
Exactly.
That makes sense to me.
I'm not sure it's the role of an advisory body to do that. I think maybe, Luke, you could help with this. Is there, in the human relations world, are there standards for this type of position? What has the city done in the past?
That I don't have a lot of background information on, but I can look into it between now and the next meeting.
It seems to me that we're not the first city to ever think about this, and so there are standards out there. Be interesting to know what they are, what other cities do, what we've done. Oops. And as far as having a list of people, an advisory body, I'm not sure that's exactly our role, so I would want to really get some guidance on that.
I'm wondering if it might be useful to have, because this seems to be an action item that has come up a lot, if it might be useful to have some sort of subcommittee to put together to research the sort of questions that you're posing, and maybe putting together some of the language, like some definitive language around what we define as experience, what we define as independence, that sort of thing, because I don't know that, I think it might be useful to have some sort of concrete thing to be referring to as we discuss during these meetings. So that's something I'm putting out there.
I think that's a good idea.
So should we ask for volunteers for a subcommittee?
Public comment first.
I'm sorry? Oh, okay.
So we'll go into public comment for this topic. Still no one, oops, oh yeah, my mic is on, good. Still no one in the council chambers, and the virtual audience is not raising their hands. So carry on.
So does your raising your hand mean you're volunteering?
Sure.
Okay. So should this be a subcommittee of 3, or does that matter?
It can be a subcommittee of 2 or 3 or 1. Just can't be 4.
Or none.
Well, I feel like because I brought it up, I should probably also volunteer.
Okay. And I would volunteer for that as well.
Well, I'd kind of be interested too, so maybe we could get a motion, first of all, to have a subcommittee, and then have a quote election to figure out who's going to do it.
I'll make a motion that we elect a subcommittee for this.
I second.
Do you want to include in the motion of who, or are we just doing the subcommittee first and then we do the election?
I believe so. We have 4 interested candidates for 3 jobs.
Are you saying, do we need a separate motion to,
But I think that's what she's
Okay.
doing. She's
Yeah.
doing separate motions.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I was just making the motion that we, in fact, have a subcommittee. And after that, we can decide who will be on it.
that's great.
And we seconded.
All right, let's vote on this first motion then, to create to establish a subcommittee. Member Downs? Yes. Member Dupuis?
Yes.
Member Johns?
Yes.
Member Lee?
Yes.
Member McQuaid?
Yes.
Members Locke and you are absent. The yeses have it.
Can we ask direction or guidance from staff on how to hold a vote that is potentially 4 people for 3 slots in keeping with, are there city policies or guidelines on this? I know we do when it's for a single slot like chair, but I don't know in this case.
I mean, we can do each individual as an individual, like, you know, should we elect this person? Yes, no. And then the second person, yes, no. Third person, yes, no. And fourth person, yes, no.
We have a motion in which we ask people to vote for 3 of the 4 people who have indicated interest, so that it didn't run into the problem of having, you know, having...
A tie?
Well, or potentially having, if we have 4 different people, but we vote one at a time, potentially a person never gets voted on, right? And then there becomes a question of which motion is heard first, right?
Oh, I see.
Can we do a paper ballot?
We can do paper ballot.
That just seems like it might solve that problem and be quick.
How about this? Is this agreeable to you, Commissioner McQuaid? That I'll move that we do a paper ballot vote in which we ask people to vote for 3 members who express interest, 3 of the members who express interest.
I'd make an amendment to that to add the names of the 3.
Yes, for sure.
4.
Yeah, in terms of to state the names of the, yeah,
Right, so that it's in the record who it was.
yes. And so that my understanding would be then sort of, to ask to vote for 3 among Commissioner McQuaid, Commissioner Lee, Commissioner Johns, and Commissioner Downs. Is that right?
Yes, and I'll second that.
All right, let's vote on that motion. The motion to elect 3 subcommittee members via paper ballot. Commissioner Downs,
Yes.
Commissioner Dupuy,
Yes.
Commissioner Johns,
Yes.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner McQuaid,
Yes.
and Commissioner Zlock, and you are absent. And I
I'm
believe-
glad you didn't tell us we had to do the ranked choice voting. It might take us all night to count. I love the charts of the distribution of votes as they go along. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Once you're done, if you could just fold your ballot and pass it this way.
See how everyone spells their names. Yeah, you kind of do.
Or do we count spelling here? We're just passing them now.
Okay, looks like we have Commissioner Downs, Commissioner Lee, and Commissioner Johns.
right. Anything else commissioners want to say about item 7-1?
Do we want to set a date for some kind of report back from the subcommittee?
We'll include an item as a standing item on the agenda for subcommittee reports. And if there is a report, you can either send us the written report before the meeting and we will attach it to the agenda, or if it's a verbal report, you can just report it during the meeting.
Okay,
And if there's nothing to report, you can just simply state nothing to report back.
okay.
In terms of if there was anything written to include, what would be the right time frame? I think our next meeting is March 21st, so what's the kind of lead time that would make sense?
I think it would be the Friday before the meeting. We are posting the agenda, so it'd be best if we receive something by, say, Wednesday, the end of Wednesday.
Try to understand Wednesday, March 13th for the meeting.
Yeah, I don't have the calendar in front of me.
Making sure I've got the correct, gap in weeks, yeah.
Yes, 13th. And Luke will send down an email to the subcommittee member of each other's email address.
Yeah, I'll put the three of you in contact and then back out, and you guys can talk amongst yourselves.
Can I ask a clarification? So once constituted, should we not speak to any other commission member about this topic?
Correct, except during
Except here, yeah.
public meeting.
There's nothing else on 7-1. I think we can move on to 7-2. Chair Johns, would you like to lead the discussion on this one?
Yes, I would. I wanted to add this to the agenda because, speaking for myself, I feel like I'm a little frustrated and disappointed in how this commission is going. So I thought it would be important for us to talk about that, to see if anyone else felt that way, and then to come up with some ways to improve it, because I feel like the commission was started, there was a lot of public interest. That interest seems to have evaporated. I'm wondering if that's our fault or what those reasons might be, and are there steps we can take to address that? So that's what I was hoping to discuss by having this on the agenda.
I mean, I agree with your frustration. This is my first, experience on an advisory commission or in any kind of city government, so it has been illuminating how long it takes to just, do basic things. It's been a learning curve for me, I know, and probably for other members of the commission. So understanding that things move at a pace that is,
Glacial.
Glacial, yeah. I mean, and to Commissioner McQuaid's point, you know, we collectively dropped the ball in December. I had my surgery, and anyway. And then last month we didn't have our meeting because something, I don't know why. But so it also feels like it's been a distant memory since last time we met, right? So it feels like nothing is really happening. As far as outreach, I feel like individually, I need to do a better job personally of talking to people that I'm connected with in the community and make sure that I'm asking them if they have any concerns, right? I'm supposed to come to this commission armed with some feel, have my finger on the pulse of how people feel about, our police department, about our policing policies, the way that, all of that. And I have not had those conversations personally as much as I ought to. I don't know if there's a way that we could have like I don't know, social media page or a portal or some kind of way to gauge public opinion other than this. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I don't get on city council meetings. I'm not sitting home on Monday nights going, I can't wait for the council meeting to start and spend my evening that way. I imagine other people the same way. They may have feelings about it, but they may not take the time out of their life to come here and express that unless it's something, really. So I think the onus is on us to reach out to the people in the community and get a sense of how they're feeling about this commission, about our police department, about how we can make improvements, because that's really what we're supposed to be doing here. So I don't know if anyone has any good ideas on how to do that other than informally. I don't know. My thoughts.
And I think, yeah, I think I share the sentiments that have been expressed. I think, there's a little bit of a chicken and egg, issue in that until we have more substantive things at our meeting, I'm not that, I'm not rushing to tell people you've got to come to hear them talk about, for them to hear us talk about how do we get going. And so I think it is, so I think, part of it is getting the feeling of the meetings accomplishing more, and then all of us feeling excited about asking other people in. But the other part of it, as you mentioned, Commissioner, is sort of creating the sense of the meetings or some format as a place where we could hear, from people raising questions or ideas or issues that we might not anticipate. And that, I think, is valid even in times when our agenda might not be full. And I'm not certain how to, sort of what's the chicken and what's the egg in terms of getting that process started. I think it would be a useful thing if we could accomplish it.
Anyone else?
Well, I'll say just as sort of an aside, because Rebecca, I think I don't have a life and you do. I do watch a lot of meetings, and this is pretty much what I hear on the Zoom or whatever, that there's no one in the audience and few people speaking. When there's an issue, whether it's something that the council's working on or a traffic issue for traffic and safety or transportation now, people do come out. I don't think we're unique, is what I'm trying to say, that we're not the only commission that doesn't play to a full house. It would be interesting, and I didn't do it, but it would be interesting to go back and look at the videos of previous meetings and see how many people have viewed them. They don't always look at us Thursday night, but people do go back and look at other times. So there may be more people out there watching than we're really aware of. So that might be something to think about.
So what do you think was going on when the task force, which led to the creation of this committee, seemed to be getting some attention. There seemed to be a good amount of sort of public discussion about the commission.
I think George Floyd. I think a lot of the discussion of law enforcement in the United States came out of the George Floyd murder. And that brought awareness to people that maybe hadn't really thought of things before. Maybe it's in the back of their mind that there was injustice, but that was a visual. That fired people up. Time goes by, people lose their energy and enthusiasm. Perhaps things get better. You know, it's hard to know that. It's hard to quantify, I think, that. But I think that was the driving force originally, and not just in Albany. I think in the Bay Area, in the state, in the nation.
I think that's fair and accurate. I'm hoping that's not everything, but
It shined a light on a problem
sure,
in law enforcement.
sure.
I do think that within the community, people do have things to say about the police department, even if it's not something, you know, as explosive as, you know, a George Floyd type of issue. For instance, I recently witnessed a crime in Albany at 7-Eleven a couple weeks ago. I was still on my crutches, and I was in the car. My sister went inside, and there was a supply truck backed up, this rear door open, unloading supplies into the store. And some people ran into the truck, accosted the driver, ran out with a carton of cigarettes or something, I don't know, big bin, and jumped in the getaway car and took off. And I'm sitting there, witness to this thing. 4 Albany police cars show up. All of them are just standing there. None of them went after the people that, you know, they had just left. They all were standing there interviewing the 2 of us that witnessed this thing instead of, I don't know, it just seemed inefficient to me. I would like to understand sort of what goes into that decision-making criteria. Like it almost seemed like they were resigned to like, oh, well, it happened. I'm just going to take this report and move on with my life, you know? I don't know. So I'm sure the other members of the community have seen things that might either alarm them or concern them or, you know, have some type of feeling about it. Maybe it's even a positive thing that they can report. That would be good information too. If we're doing something right, we want to know that too. So I just think that I want to make sure people know we exist and that this is a place to come and bring those concerns or compliments or whatever they have to say about it, because I am certain that people have stuff to say about it.
And, you know, maybe the scope of the commission as one that exists to hear complaints is a little narrow. Because I'm thinking a policing commission should be a place where the commissioners are seen as knowledgeable about what's happening with the department and how the department works and operates and the history of the department, and is a kind of, the commission acts as a kind of interface to the community for all things related to public safety, a kind of two-way flow, not just a one-way flow where, okay, you've got a complaint, we're going to deal with that. I mean, does that make sense? And is that sort of overstepping our bounds?
What do you mean when you say if there's a complaint, we're going to deal with it? We're not going to deal with it. police department has complaint forms. We can direct people to how to fill out a complaint form, but I don't think it's right to give the impression that we're going to deal with it.
Well, okay, that may be the case. If that is the case, then I'm confused. Because I thought that was the point. The point was to have a place where the community could come, voice their concern, file a complaint if needed, and then rest assured that someone outside of the department would then follow up on that complaint and investigate it. However, the intricacies and machinations work, but to feel like they would be heard. I mean, is that not everyone else's sort of understanding of how or why we're here?
My sort of understanding of why we're here is that we're looking at data coming at us either from these, the reports. We're identifying patterns or like general issues, right? So that we can make recommendations to the city council or whomever that it be dealt with. But we have no actual decision-making authority to make any changes. That's my understanding. We're making recommendations to the city council for them to take action if necessary, or making recommendations to the police department.
Can I just read that on our agenda has the commission purpose? Establishment of a policing commission is intended to further community participation and engagement regarding policing policy and procedure. The commission may make policy recommendations to the city council and receive all legally public complaints from the Albany Police Department to determine whether to recommend that such complaints be referred to an outside consultant for investigation consistent with California law. So that's our scope. So I think, the furthering participation and engagement, that is part of our scope. I will agree with that. And I think being able to direct people to a complaint or to, even for us to pass on to the department, we heard from several people this happened. Perhaps you could look into it. That kind of a thing, rather than thinking that we're going to solve the problem.
Okay, so if I'm a member of the audience and I'm listening to us now, I'm thinking, why would I go there if they are not going to do anything about it? So I'm thinking, do we have the interest, the will, the wherewithal to hear a complaint and to be able to take steps, even if those are advisory steps, to address that complaint or not?
I wonder if it, where, the word complaint can serve two purposes where I think our, specific role might differ. If something is a formal complaint, to the department, then I do agree with Commissioner McQuaid that in that case, to say that, on this date, this, thing happened involving this officer, then I do think that, they're going, referring people to the formal process to get that, put on the record and on paper, and to start the process that then would lead it to come back to us for a recommendation to council, whether it requires, an outside consultant would be the way to go forward. I think more broadly or generally, complaint can also mean somebody, having a question or a critique of, a policy, right? And there, I think it is within our understanding, or at least my understanding of the part that Commissioner McQuaid read, which I appreciate, that as, people making, as a group that can make recommendations to council on policies, that if somebody were to say, why aren't we looking at, if, I'm just going to pick something randomly, bicyclists are being struck, are the police looking into this? And that, we could ask that question, we could see if we get a response, we could, make a recommendation there that wouldn't speak to a personnel action against an officer, right? That would be, so in that sense, our remit is both narrow in that we have a specific role if a formal complaint that goes into personnel comes up, but also very broad in the sense that as our work plan, suggests that we can speak to, a wide range of policies and are supposed to be receiving a wide range of updates that might lead us to make, recommendations to council about the crisis team, about policies on pursuit, which I can imagine is a thing that govern the interaction Commissioner Dupuis saw, about, purchases, about, any one of a number of things. So, in that sense, if someone says, I don't understand why we do this, we could figure out why that reason is, and then, try and assess and get feedback on what work that policy is doing and why other options weren't followed, and come to a reasoned recommendation based on that.
I think I pretty much agree with what you're saying. I think it's important, though, to remember to think of it as a collaboration, to where if we were getting complaints, people's opinions are based on their realities. I think that's true of everybody. But then having a discussion about like a particular policy, and perhaps pursuit is a good example, understanding more what the policy is and why it is, and perhaps why a certain action was either taken or not taken. But it's not up to us to say, without some kind of better knowledge, this is, we think that this should be the policy. No, it's more of a collaborative dialogue and understanding the policy so that we can then share that with the community, perhaps not right that moment, but maybe at the next meeting. This came up at the last meeting. We've discussed it. Maybe someone from staff could be here. This is how this works. It's not a perfect system, but I think that gives a little give and take and a little more understanding of how it works.
I guess I have a question based on what was the, I guess the process that was just laid out. Where in that process does the policy recommendations factor in? Because my understanding is that the process is a question is raised, such as the one that Commissioner Dupuis just brought up. Maybe we ask that question towards the department. Maybe we get a presentation, we understand better, and that might be that, or we could make a policy recommendation to the city council. And, I guess our presence here is to amplify concerns and direct them to the city council and be more direct about it and, in an official capacity. So my understanding of the process is, one, a question is raised or a problem is observed. Two, we go to the department, we go to, the stakeholders to ask, what's the history, what's the context? Can you explain X, Y, and Z to us, and then we decide, do we want to make a policy recommendation, or do we want to explain to the public why this is? Either way, I think, it's both, we're both here to, be a public forum for concerns or, letting us know what's going right, and also a place where we can be an official channel for updates if they need to be made.
Yeah, and I think all of it relates back to what we discussed in the beginning when we were reviewing this dashboard, that we don't really understand this information. And so I think we all sort of feel like, to your point, we should have some knowledge, more than the average community member. We are the commissioner, police commissioners. So I think we do need to just be more educated, and that is going to involve more interaction with, members of the police department coming here, explaining, more of the policies, why the policies exist, what purposes they serve, so we can understand, so that we are better prepared to communicate that to any community member that might have because to Commissioner McQuaid's point, people have opinions, but those opinions might not be based on anything other than how they feel. And if they understood, it could just be an education piece. Like, this is the policy, and this is why the policy exists. And that alone could be enough to, sometimes just a little bit of education goes a long way. And I think that's what we're lacking right now. We're lacking the information ourselves. And once, we kind of get rolling and get a consistent, rhythm with getting timely reports and more detailed information, and our understanding of policies grows as a commission, then we're going to be more successful at communicating that.
One thing that, as part of our work plan is to try to work with staff and through them with the department to, kind of think about timing, which might also then give each meeting a specified purpose. If it was that once every 3 meetings was on, or 4, whatever's the right number, we have one focuses the crisis team, and both, sort of informational updates, data updates. I think exactly how to chop up the other parts is, a little bit, less, I'm less certain, but you could imagine one, where every, 3 or 4 months we, go through one part of the policies, which are quite extensive for the department. That would take us, quite a while to do, but we would, then have a purpose and focus for our time, as well as the other, updates that we would get. So you could imagine once a year, just an update on the engagement of the police department and the schools, right? That may not need to be every month or 6 months, but that's one of the things that we listed on our work plan. So some kind of organizational system where, as long, with, recognizing the complexity of schedules, we have a sense that there's a flow of our meetings of, how the different pieces of our work plan are going to be allocated. And then something comes up or something new happens, that also gets added in.
Out of curiosity, do we have the policy book available to us? Is it publicly available?
I believe so. It's on the policing website, police website. And I believe the last time Trish Gomez was here had shared with everyone where that is.
Okay.
The other, one of the questions that I heard from your discussion, and perhaps you want to share what questions you had in terms of, one of the questions was the dashboard. You don't understand what the number means. Perhaps you guys can email Luke the questions. We can ask the department the questions that you may have. And then that way, the next time that they're able to come here and present, they can come with responses to those questions. That might help. Or if you have the question now, we can certainly note it down.
I think everyone sort of had the question of, so property crime totals, there's a total there. What is that inclusive of? Same with violent crime total. Is that all violent crime? Does that include domestic violence and, just random acts of violence? What is that inclusive of? Can it be broken down further so that it's a little less vague, I guess? Because, I noticed, it may not seem like much, but from December to January, violent crime totals went from 3 to 7. That's kind of an uptick. That's more than twice, as much in a month. It would be interesting to know if that was, assaults on Solano Avenue or something like that, that were happening, we're unaware, and there's a specific issue. It's hard to identify trends in the numbers if you don't really know what they represent. So for me, I guess the question would be just to have a little bit more detail and a better understanding of what is captured in these numbers.
One of the, of course, we will forward these questions, but one of the website that Trish had shared a couple months ago was there's a page on the policing, and I'm going to find that page and share it. I'm not sure if it reflects exactly, for example, you said violent crime total, what does that number include? But there is a map that shows exactly what crime happened where. So that may help better understand. If you're just looking for detailed data, that might be a place. I'll see if I can find that page now and then share that.
On the definitional questions, there's a memorandum on the item attachment on the October meeting, which I think was in preparation for hers, where Chief Geisberger gives some of the general definitions, but I can imagine that also leading to follow-ups. But I do think the broader question that Commissioner Dupuy raises of opportunity to say, is 3 to 7 a sort of normal monthly variation? Is it tied to a specific, actor or group of actors doing a series of things? And has that person been, has there been an arrest made in these? That the kind of follow-ups, even once we know the definition, would be helpful to make sense of, okay, we've got this number. Does that suggest it's going to go from 3 to 7 to 18, or that, we can likely expect it to go from 3 to 7 back to 3? I do enjoy the map you have up. Enjoy is surely the wrong word, but it's interesting to look at and to play with.
Yes. So, for example, this is the crime data range from, I think this is this week. I'll make sure you're okay. And you can see, what each of the number means and the legends on this side. And I believe if you click on it, it would give you more details. And then you can, of course, sorry, my mouse is not really listening to me. For example, if we want to go from January, it would include more.
I scroll in, they'll come back. It always confuses me when it pulls out like that.
Oops. So, number 2 means assault.
Reduce down, so all we would see would be assaults. I guess we could get we could be getting a walkthrough on the types of crimes and exactly which ones we would click to make sure that maybe the ones that go to categories on that. No, that's my fault. I apologize. Yeah.
Something that you guys want to do a section?
The idea that we each would review a section of those policies and then come ready for a discussion of that.
My thought would be maybe, tackling too many at a single meeting I don't think would behoove us, because we might get into
Exactly.
the weeds. No, choose one broad policy, so I just thought it would be an interesting exercise to, go through sort of methodically, obviously spark some comment from the public that way, just so that we're, whatever. And then it's listed out there, we read it at the meeting, and then just have a generalized discussion. If it sits with it well with
Of policies.
The policy's on the website, and I'm up to policy 1023. Some of which is, well, I think this is important, this one, but, some of which are kind of routine, because there are almost 700 pages.
Commissioner McQuaid, if we do, one a month, it will be done in the year 2178. We can restart.
Exactly.
So if we're going to do it that way, I don't think it requires a motion, does it? We're just going to go independently, take a look at it, come back with a few policies that.
Yeah, my question was, do we need a motion to add that as a permanent part of the agenda? No, we don't. Okay, great.
The agenda is created with the coordination of staff liaison and the chair.
Okay, great.
So we've got homework.
Public comment?
Anything else from the commissioners on this item, 7-2?
That's what.
So we didn't talk about public outreach. Does that mean we want to put that on hold while we educate ourselves by necessity, or?
I don't know.
Well, to be honest, it doesn't seem like we can reasonably go anywhere and talk about the police department with any semblance of credibility at this point without.
I think just personally, I'm going to make a bigger effort to talk to the community members that I cross paths with, just to let them know, hey, I'm on the police commission. Do you have any concerns? Do you have any questions? This is when we meet. You should come through. Just on a personal level, informally, just to get the word out there that, we exist, that I'm a member, that they have a connection to it. Each one of us, I'm sure, has a circle, a network that we can tap into. Because to your point earlier, you said there had been some real excitement around the development of this commission, and that seems to have waned a bit. Which, to Commissioner McQuaid's point, is probably a positive thing, right? If people aren't banging down our doors, that must mean everything's chill, knock wood. But still, I think it's important that people know that we exist, that we're here, and that it doesn't have to be, some hot button, super controversial issue. It could be anything related to, the police department, how they operate, what the commission does, if they have questions for us, or if they have an ask for us, like they want us to do something that, we haven't been focusing on. I just think it's important that people know we exist and that, yeah. So personally, I don't know that we can do anything formalized, like create a Facebook page or something, but just personally, take the mantle to talk to people about it. I know I need to do that more. So that's kind of what I'm going to do.
That's a good idea. I actually, if it's okay to circle back for a second, I wonder if one place we could get started. The FAQ remains up. If you look, it's at the bottom of the list that, of the first set of policy lists, and it's the one that's not in the policy manual, I think, though I could be wrong. And that was formulated after the public meetings in the summer of 2020. And, each of us, starting by reviewing that and thinking about questions that we have, and then possibly getting an answer, whether there's a presentation or not, we could ask the staff to ask the department, are there any parts of the FAQ that are that are in need of update? In other words, are there any of the things that were true at the time in October of 2020, but have been changed by policy since? And that is I think that itself is still somewhat significant, but it is 11 pages, so it might, allow us to start in a way that doesn't put us right into the problem Commissioner McQuaid accurately pointed out. And those were responsive to questions that were posed at a couple of online meetings about public safety in the summer and fall of 2020.
I can look into whether the FAQs have been, whether anything has changed.
I wonder if it might, if there does indeed end up being a agenda item on discussion of policy, if, we could have this be one of that'd be one of the attachments. So that member of the public looking at the agenda would know, some of the places that we'd be pulling from. Sorry to distract from, I thought Commissioner Dupuy had good ideas, and you both raised, I'm wary of saying, come to our meeting and watch us figure out what to do, right? Like, I'd rather invite people in when it seems like we've got a little bit more momentum. But I also recognize the problem with that.
There's nothing else. I think it's time for public comment. No one in the council chambers, but online, Mr. David Danby has been waiting very patiently. Let's see if I can get him live. Mr. Danby.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, it's actually, I'm using his computer, but this is his wife. I appreciate the conversation that you've been having, and I have a bunch of points I want to make, but I just want to start out by saying that I don't think it's a problem that you don't know what you're doing. I think that this is a commission that should be very highly informed by the public, so I think encouraging the public to come as soon as possible to be part of this process as you're figuring out what Albany needs and what the community needs. I think that that's the whole point of it to me, is to see what the needs are in the community. In terms of getting people to come, this is a problem throughout Albany and all of the commissions and city council meetings. There is very, very poor communication coming from the city. There's an email that gets sent out pretty much, and then people get sent to the website. People who don't don't sign up for the emails. People don't have access to the computer. There's a lot of reasons why people aren't going to get the message. So I think it's really important to reach out to every single part of the community to tell them this commission exists and that you really want to hear from people. They are critical for the work that you want to do. So that would be the faith community, the library, the community center, businesses, school, the school district for sure, I think really, really actively reaching out, talking to people, making appointments to come and speak to groups, to staff members, to whatever. Really, if you really want to hear from the community, you need to actually actively do it. It's just something that doesn't happen easily. Post things under the BART tracks, post flyers, whatever. In terms of policy, I just want to, I can't see the timer. Is it possible for me to see the timer? Because I don't know how much time I have left. Because
Little over a minute.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's much better. I just want to point out that there's a difference between policy and how it's enforced, and I think that's something you probably all know, and that maybe that's why you're here. But yes, there are policies, but Albany, you may or may not know, has a reputation amongst some people that it's not, because of the Albany police, is not a good place to come, especially if you're a person of color. So I think that you need to be thinking about that. And if the police chief does come to the meeting to speak, would that be a time that the public could come and ask questions of the chief? And if not, I think having some sort of public forum where the police chief and maybe some of the police officers were there to answer questions about the work that they do. I also have questions about the kind of training they receive. Do they do restorative justice kinds of trainings? Or do they have alternatives to punishment such as restorative justice? Oh, I heard the beep, so that must be telling me I'm done. I think that pretty much covers all of it. So thank you very much for the work that you're doing, and keep doing it.
Thank you. Okay, no other hands are up in the virtual audience. But thank you for your comment. We'll move on to 7-3, which is election of chair and vice chair. Chair Downs, how do you want to handle this item tonight? Oh, excuse me. I feel like that's the second time I've done that. Chair Downs, how do you like to handle this tonight?
Well, I suggest we wait until we have a full commission before we elect a new chair and vice chair, unless someone else objects to that.
No, I agree with you. I think it's only fair to the two that aren't here. They can throw their hat in the ring if they would like.
Or we could elect them.
Joke's on you.
We want people to come, that'll get them here.
That's good. So do we need to make a motion then to postpone?
Yeah, table or to postpone to next meeting.
Okay.
Move to table or postpone the next meeting?
Second.
All right, let's take the vote. Commissioner Downs,
Yes.
Commissioner Dupuis,
Yes.
Commissioner Johns,
Yes.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner McQuaid.
Yes.
All right, the ayes have it. Commissioners Locke and you are absent. So this item will be put on the next meeting's agenda. Okay. Moving on, number 8, future agenda items.
I think that was a little bit a part of our last discussion about reviewing policies or FAQs, coming back with policies that we want to discuss in the future. So that's one that we're going to put on for next time. I don't know if anybody has anything else to add.
I think you all already mentioned, but adding subcommittee report. Can I ask a question on the agenda? If there were, can announcements, do they have to literally, I guess, sort of how broad is the term announcements? Like if we wanted to ask people to, could people, talk about those people, commissioners who've been on the ride-alongs, like, for example, and observe the inputting of RIPA information. Is that the kind of thing that could come up in an announcement, or does an announcement, or if not, is there some other way that we could have a kind of updates from the commissioners about things they've done, things they've seen?
I think we could do it either way. If you prefer it to be an item, we can put it as an item, but I don't know how many people actually, how many commissioner actually signed up for the ride-along. I don't think that many. So, or you can also do an announcement just to say, I was on the ride-along with, you know, police department, this is my experience. Of course, we shouldn't go into deep discussion from the announcement, but definitely you can share your experience, like summarize your experience and share that. So that's an easy place to do that. Or if there's other events that's happening, that's a place to share too.
Any other future agenda item requests or discussion? Appears not. So we can open up to public comment, but only for 1 minute this time. If there's anyone in the public who wants to make a comment, now's the time. No one in the council chambers, not seeing anyone online eagerly raising their hands this time. All right then. Number 9, next meeting, same Thursday as usual, third Thursday, 7 p.m. It's March 21st.
Just a quick reminder, if there's something in writing that you'd like to provide to attach to the agenda, so try to provide it to us by Wednesday, the 13th.
And if there's nothing else this week, we can adjourn the meeting at 8:22.